Hello, everyone. Good morning, wherever you are. Good now. Good, whatever is the time in your zone. Thank you very much. Um, this is 11 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time. Sunday regular meditation followed by a talk. So we will first do the refuge prayer and for immeasurables. Please join your hands at the heart and start up your mind and heart with the good motivation to sit still during the first half an hour meditation and then followed by the talk. Oyenda Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Vyete Eladam Bhavachu Ayehandala Aishare Buddha Vajube and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Vyete Eladam Bhavachu Ayehandala Aishare Buddha Vajube and Buddha Dhamma Sangha Aitere Vyete Eladam Bhavachu Ayehandala Aishare Buddha Vajube. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. May they know our power from happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and those they have power. May all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and cause of suffering. May they know our power from happiness that know no suffering. May they dwell in equanimity, free from attachment, aversion, and those they have power. May all beings happiness and a cause of happiness. May they be free from suffering and a cause of suffering. May they never part from the happiness that no suffering. May that equanimity free from attachment and aversion to those and far. So now we will do the 3 slots of 10 minutes calm abiding meditation, during which you primarily observe 4S, stillness of your posture, and sincerity of your motivation, and serenity of your attention to the object of meditation. Which, so first, for instance, when you're sitting in a correct posture, you're scanning the body, you got to pay your serene, undivided attention to the very scanning of the body. During the second time, when you're doing the qualified round of breathing, forward counting, you do the inhalation, retention, exhalation, count 1, and then do the next 2, 3, the forward counting. You need to serene attention not to lose the counting. Then during the third phase, we do the super qualified round of breathing, reverse counting. So if you're counting reverse from 40, reverse first round is 40, second round is 39, and so you pay very serene attention through that very technique in each of the 3 slots. And you do that all very simple, you don't complicate it, just stay very present in paying your attention with this. So I'll just indicate the start of each time for the 3 slots. Try to be really disciplined without becoming bored or dull or forgetful or overzealous, or just really gently making your way to achieve calm, peaceful, serene attention, to let the mind become very focused one pointedly. The simple techniques to stay with the posture, stay with counting forward, stay with the reverse counting, with good degree of balance and discipline. So welcome everyone, well zooming. This morning's topic that I've decided to talk on is in honor of His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, who turned 79 only a few days ago. So it would be good to reflect on His Holiness's background, who he is, what he has uh, done to support the Dharma in all this time. So it's very good to know that. And I'm not sure how many people have met, and wouldn't be wrong that most of you haven't met him, but you have heard of him. Um, he visited several times to Australia, but doesn't mean you would have met by then. Anyway, so today, in order to recollect and rejoice his wonderful life and his wonderful background, I'm going to uh, uh, give a really reflective kind of biographical knowledge that I have off my head, in order to benefit all of you, so that we can know a little bit about this wonderful being. Little later, I will share some photos as well, some from old photos to some recent photos, so that that picture will speak much clearer. But first, just briefly, His Holiness Sakya Tenzin is the 41st, the head of the Sakya order, which started in 1042, in 1073 rather, 1073, with the founder of the Sakya monasteries, Konchok Gyalpo, the first official founder of the Sakya monastery. But his family goes way back, uh, earlier than even Padmasambhava's days, and one of His Holiness's great grandfathers were one of the 25 main disciples of Padmasambhava, and some of them also served as a minister for early Tibetan Dharma kings like King Tiralpa and Trizon Detsen, and one of the first 7 Tibetans to be ordained as a monastic by the great Indian abbot Shantarakshita was Khön Luwangsung, who is a direct great forefathers of His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen. So from the historical point of view, there's no single family line that has kept consistently strong in being part of the start of the Dharma in Tibet, being one of the first 7 monks of Tibet. That's we're talking about 10th century, 10th century. Now we are in 21st century. The 1100 years of continuous unbroken lineage has been held, not just hereditarily, but as one of the first monastics of Tibet. And then, of course, from then onwards, soon after the founder of the Sakya monastery, his eldest son, Sachen Kunga Nyingpo, and then Sachen Kunga Nyingpo had 3 sons, of which Sonam Tsemo and Trakpa Gyaltsen. And then their younger brother's son is Sakya Pandita, and then his younger brother's son is Chogya Pakpa. These 5 are called the 5 founding masters of the Sakya lineage. And it is during the 4th Sakya Pandita that Sakya rose great heights in popularity in the world, because of Sakya Pandita as the unmistakenly recognized emanation of Manjushri. Actually became the royal preceptor to the Yuan dynasty, and converted the Mongol Kublai Khan and their descendant into the Dharma, and stopped the Mongol kind of aggressive behavior that otherwise ruled quite a big part of the whole Asian subcontinent, all the way from Greeks to the Japan, whole of that area down to south, north of Ganges River, all were under the reign of the Mongols. And these Mongol Khans became very, very devoted to Sakya Pandita. And then as a result of the Sakya Pandita converted the Mongols into following Buddhism. And then, of course, Sakya Pandita had to spend last part of his life in Mongol court as the royal preceptor, and actually passed away in Gansu province in the modern China called Lanzhou city. And then the Mongol emperor really wanted to continue, so they invited his nephew Chogyal Pakpa, and who gave Hevajra empowerment firstly to the one of the empress, and then later on she persuaded the emperor himself and 25 ministers to receive Hevajra empowerment. As a thanksgiving offering of that, then they gave Tibet back to the Tibetans and asked the Sakyas to rule itself. So Sakyas actually became the first Tibetans to gain independence of Tibet from the Mongols. It never was under China, it was under the Mongols, as China was, as Vietnam was, as many of the Asian countries was. Anyway, so from then onwards, Sakya actually politically and spiritually ruled Tibet for nearly a century. Anyway, so main thing is that His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, who is the 41st, comes from this amazing celebrated family, not only unbroken hereditary lineage, but from the very early days, each and every one of them has very carried out the legacy of bodhisattvas, just as Padmasambhava in 8th century, as well as Atisha in 11th century, predicted that all those who will be born in this family will be emanation of bodhisattvas and will greatly uphold. So this being the case, up till now, we have His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen. Now, His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen himself, 41st, was born in Sakya, near Sakya, place called Zedong, in 1945, in September, according to Tibetan calendar, on the 1st of the 8th lunar month. So that was 2 days ago, that he turned 79. And so His Holiness's mother had great difficulty conceiving a child. She did conceive a daughter, but only one daughter survived, but others passed away. And so there were great many obstacles conceiving a child. But however, by doing many prayers and rituals, miraculously, his mother then fell pregnant and had many auspicious dreams, and His Holiness was born. Almost like they almost gave up the hope, but somehow all the prayers have worked, and His Holiness' birth has coincided with many auspicious signs, and of course he was traditionally been anointed to be the next Sakya Trinzen, as far as upbringing and training and all that was concerned, and he was already therefore appointed to become the successor, but he was due to his young age and the political turmoil in Tibet, he did not get enthroned until in 1959. It's just a couple of months before he escaped, but he therefore received a very huge, a formal enthronement ceremony, which was endorsed by the Central Tibetan government, and which had many dignitaries and representatives from all over Sakya monasteries and Tibet. And so His Holiness was enthroned. But unfortunately, both His Holiness Sakya Trichen's parents died very, very early, so he was very much orphaned. Neither of them, his father died, both his father died very early, and so did his mother. So he was very much left as an orphan. And of course, his elder sister was alive, but then his auntie, his auntie, then took care of him, because his auntie was the actual queen of the Sakya Trinzen previous. Because his auntie never gave birth to any child, then his auntie was such a gracious woman. She persuaded His Holiness Sakya Trinzen's father to marry her younger brother, her younger sister, so that in hope of producing a child. And then that's how it happened. So her younger sister gave birth to His Holiness, but she died not soon after. Soon after he was born. So incredibly, that very stepmother or auntie became his very mother-like figure. Dharma Kusho, we call it. Very, very incredible, like a female body, but did not actually become Sakya Trinzen, but she actually did the real leadership in the most hard and critical times during which Tibet was invaded and the family escaped in exile, and she was the head of the family. His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen was only a young boy, and with a half a dozen attendants, they managed to escape into exile. But he did manage to receive a number of important empowerments and teaching from his late father, even though he was relatively young, as well as many other prominent teachers, particularly in Khenchen, Ngor Sar Khenchen, Tambar Rinpoche, and as well as Khenchen Jambal Zangbo, and so many other teachers. I wouldn't go into the list of the names. And then anyway, so 1959, he escaped into India. Of course, when he and his auntie, auntie or stepmother, together with a half a dozen attendants, that's all they managed to come. They just barely managed to escape unscathed, but without being able to take anything whatsoever. Thankfully, Sakya is relatively near the border of Sikkim, so they managed to get into Sikkim fairly easily. Anyway, His Holiness Sakya Trinzen, after having arrived in exile, then founded the first Sakya monastery in what we call in exile, Sakya Kum Monastery. Kum Monastery, and I was trying to add some photos here. This is so I'll do it manually. It didn't work again. So anyway, just going on. His Holiness Sakya Trinzen therefore founded the Sakya Kum Monastery, and the Kum Monastery in Darjeeling. It was originally a kind of a monastery that didn't have monks, but actually was quite well built structure in Darjeeling, because Darjeeling is like a convenient hill station in East Bengal, north of Calcutta, where British use a summer kind of a resort, and there are lots of Tibetan and Nepalese and people of the Himalayan range lived there and did trading with Tibet. So His Holiness Sakya Trinzen was able to get a loan or use of that place, because there was this Kum monastery, but there were no monks. Because since there were at least about 40 or 50 monks from Sakya and Ngor has escaped in exile, they have nowhere to live or do it. So they permitted to use of that. So that became very useful as a place for a couple of years. And while in exile, His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen studied under Khenchen Ape Rinpoche and also Khenpo Rinchen, and he also learned English. He never got to go to school, but he learned all English privately through some tutors, and His Holiness mastered the English language, and he quickly mastered most of the studies. And then His Holiness um, eventually moved to Missouri from Darjeeling in 1962 during the border clashes between India and basically what was a war between India and China in 1962. So all the people who were living in that border area was very threatened, so they all escaped. And anyhow, His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, with his half a dozen attendants, again relocated themselves in Missouri, while the monks at the Kum monastery continued to stay. The Kum monastery is one of the first, earliest, actually the earliest Sakya monastery. Not only the early, but they all have some of the most senior monks from the Sakya itself actually came and lived there, and they hold all the traditional rituals and practices of the old Sakya monastery. So, and then when His Holiness relocated in Missouri in 1964, then His Holiness Sakya Tenzin moved down to Rajpur, where the present Sakya Center is, called 187 Rajpur Road. They purchased, or first rented, then later on purchased this dilapidated building. There are lots of dilapidated British buildings on those road, and they bought this, and so that became his seat. So, and then all the Sakya monks and Ngorpa monks from all over Tibet, they all flocked there. And then, of course, those times, refugee times, very difficult. But His Holiness incredibly managed to create a home for these homeless monks and Sakyas, and they really started in a very humble way there in early 1964. Then the first major event in the Sakya, His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen's life was in 1967. He gave Lamdre in Varanasi. That was the first historical Lamdre that His Holiness gave, not only outside Tibet, but in Varanasi, where Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma. So it was a very auspicious beginning. I don't think any of the heads of the Tibetan lineage given any such major teachings in Varanasi, also in Bodh Gaya by then. So that was a really good, early, auspicious opening. I know the monk who sponsored it, Ngorpa Kunsang Gyatso. He took great effort, not that he was well off, but he made great effort to create this Lamdre, so that all the Sakyas, monks and devotees and would-be devotees, as well as the monks in Mustang and Himalayan border area who used to go to Tibet, can travel to India receive. So that was a really, really great positive move. It is during that time most of the Sakya teachers, Ngorpa, Tsarpa, all gathered there. So His Holiness Gongma Trichen himself, still a young man, and maybe just 25 or something, and he gave the first Lamdre Tsokshe in Varanasi at the Gen Gose's monastery. We call it Gen Gose's monastery because there was only Gen Gose is a very kind of a gray-haired Gelugpa monk. He went to India, but he built this very humble monastery in there, Varanasi, and that was the home for all Tibetans. Incredible. He was so generous to open the Gelugpa monastery to give this Lamdre there. In where else but Bodh Gaya, in Varanasi. And so I remember all these Mustang monks going through our village. That time I was too young to know what was going on. And everybody was flocking to Varanasi. So that was a great historical opening, very auspicious that the head of the Sakya lineage giving Lamdre outside Tibet in Varanasi is a very historical event. I think it was a very auspicious beginning, 1967, I'm told. And then it is around that time His Holiness Sakya Tenzin has been working very, very hard with the assistance of few very amazing, capable attendants, Tutop Tulku and Chiwan Tulku brothers, these two Tulku brothers, and many able attendants and others. They established this. They bought the land to produce the Sakya settlement, special settlement for the Tibetans who came from Sakya proper in Tibet. They create a Tibetan refugee settlement not far from Rajpur, and it is around that time that Sakya Center itself become a lot more well established, and then the Puruwala Sakya settlement was established, all with the correct endorsement and blessings of His Holiness Dalai Lama. His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen worked very closely right from the very beginning all the way till today, completely 100% under the direction and advice and of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So Sakya Puruwala was started. I remember going there, and then there His Holiness built Sakya Magon, the main seat of Sakya monastery. Even though Rajpur Sakya monastery is much older, but they deliberately made sure that the Magon, the main monastery, the mother monastery is in Puruwala, where all the traditional people from Sakya actually have come and settled. So that happened. And then not soon after that, in 1972, I think, His Holiness found Sakya College. The Sakya College was founded firstly in a kind of rented premises up in Missouri with only half a dozen monks, with Khenchen Ape Rinpoche as the teacher and the principal. And I know that it started very humbly. I remember the day His Eminence Chogyam Trichen Rinpoche also went for that, for the opening, but it was very humble opening. So the Sakya College for the young bright monks to study Sakya philosophy and Buddhist philosophy was established in the rented premises in Missouri in 1972, on none other than the anniversary of one of the anniversary of Sakya Pandita. So on another auspicious beginning. So His Holiness slowly built and established the Sakya Center, Sakya Puruwala settlement, and Sakya College, and then of course thereafter we have Sakya Nunnery, as well as many other establishments that all sprang across India and Nepal under his really inspiration, guidance. Many monasteries were built, and a lot of them revitalized. All the Sakya monastery in Mustang, that area, and in Ladakh, they all really come to revived in many different ways, due to His Holiness's incredible kindness and wise guidance. His Holiness traveled, I remember, to Ladakh and Mangdro Monastery. He gave many empowerment there, and then His Holiness himself received all the collection of tantras from Chogyam Trichen Rinpoche in 1971 and 72. So that's when I've also first met His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen. And those days, His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen lived upstairs at the Rajpur Sakya Center Monastery with his few attendants. And then, of course, soon it was because His Holiness Sakya Tenzin is brought up in the family where the successor has to be a hereditary member of the family. Because of that, it is read in His Holiness' own biography that although he really never wished to become a householder, but he said he lacked the merit So he did not have any choice but to marry. So he often sort of very humbly lament that he didn't have the merit to be an ordained member, but was forced by his tradition to become a householder. So by various causes of condition, His Holiness was married to Dharma Kusho, Dharma Kusho, who we nowadays call very humbly, very respectfully Yum Kusho, because she has now given birth to two wonderful Dungses, His Holiness Radha Vajra the 42nd, and His Holiness Jnana Vajra the 43rd. So His Holiness became a father for these two wonderful Dungses. And of course, he traveled to Europe in the early mid 70s, I remember, and he went all the way to Seattle and reconnected with Phuntsok Podang, because Phuntsok Podang is the other family from Sakya, from the same family, who both sides, Phuntsok Podang and Dharma Podang, took turns to guide and lead the Sakya. It's only started a couple of generations before. It's all from the same family. They did so in order that to prevent the breaking of the lineage. They made sure the whole Sakya Kon family had choices of having families producing their kind of descendants, so that there will be no danger of losing the lineage. So it started fairly early during Danyi Zangbo Pal's time, and then Sakya Kon family itself got divided into four. And then later on, the four became two, and so this two has been taking turn to these two called Phuntsok Podang and Dharma Podang has been taking turn to reign and be the head of the lineage. But remember, the Sakya head of the Sakya lineage, once he became the lineage holder, he stayed as the lineage holder whole life, So there was no kind of strict duration, set duration like 5 years or 10. No, this is a whole life, unless some Sakya Tenzins graciously retired and passed on to the next. So that's why we only have His Holiness Sakya Tenzin is 41st. That means we only have 41st, all the way from 1073 till 1959. We have only 41 Lin herbs. So what's that? That's because all the teachers lived as long as they did, and they hardly handed over to the successors to anyone. Maybe a couple of them did, but then, of course, anyway, that tradition has dictated to make sure the lineage is continued, and in order that doesn't discontinue, that these two families both are married and having children took turn. So therefore, when His Holiness Sakya Tenzin went to USA in 1975 or 5 or 6, I think 75, he went straight to Seattle to make connection with Dakchen Rinpoche from Phuntsok Bodra. And of course, they were very much from the same family from old Tibet, but it has been separated by having to live in exile and having seen each other. So from then onwards, the family kind of connection and relationship was very much strong and healthy, as it always was. But because of the distance, it wasn't quite easy to maintain that, because very few people saw where was Dakchen Rinpoche in India. The Dakchen Rinpoche from Sakya Phuntsok Pedang migrated to USA very early in the 60s under the sponsorship of Washington University. So that's why the two families got very separated. Anyway, His Holiness Sakya Tenzin traveled to the West, and then he gave a number of teachings, empowerment, and in Switzerland probably is one of the early places, because there's the first Western country that has a Tibetan settlement in Switzerland, and then also to Canada. So in this way, in 1980, after His Holiness married, he became a father to Dungses, And then in 1980, 80 and 81, then the Puruwala, the main seat of Sakya monastery, was inaugurated. It is there His Holiness then gave Lamde Lopche. The biggest Lamde Lopche, I think, in history was held there, because that was the inauguration of the big monastery there, as well as establishment of the Sakya Thupten Namgyalling Shedra there, with Khenpo Rinchen as the first abbot there, I remember. And then the monastery was inaugurated, and then inaugural teaching was given Lamdre Lopche. And this Urinchen Gyatso, who is the ex-monk from Pembo Langtang, sponsored and requested His Holiness give the Lamdre. He was very kind to organize and sponsor that, because so many of the Sakyas from all over the world and Himalayan kingdoms, they all flocked there. I was there too. And His Eminence Chogi Trichen Rinpoche was, all the senior lamas we have heard about, all were there. You wouldn't believe how happy occasion that was. Those days no one could come from Tibet, so those who are exiled, they were all there. And that went on for about 3 months. And it is at that point then the Sakya lineage has really grown much stronger, because everybody became his disciple by receiving Lamdre, both Sokshe and Lopshe. Otherwise, he's just a figurehead. People never see him. If they see him, they may receive some minor empowerment, but not the complete transmission. So, having given Lamdre Sokshe in 67, he also gave Lamdre Sokshe in Rajpur 1975, which also I attended. And then he gave the big one in 1980 in Puruwala. Of course, then he gave also Lamdre in Sakya College in 1987, and other Lamdre Lopche when the big Sakya monastery was found near Manduwala. And so His Holiness has given lots of Lamdres in India, but he has actually given more Lamdre overseas than in India. Can you believe it? In Australia, His Holiness gave Lamdre 3 times. He visited Australia as early as 1988 at the invitation of Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche. That time, Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche was abbot or head of the Vajradhara Gongpa up in northern New South Wales. And His Holiness actually traveled very far all the way from Australia and gave Lamdre Tsokshe up in Kyogo. Can you believe it? In the middle of New South Wales country, in the dairy farmers, on top of a fairly simple structure building. And His Holiness stayed in this small little hut. You wouldn't believe. Tibetans would never put His Holiness in such a small place. It's like a small hut. And His Holiness stayed there, but His Holiness is amazing, In spite of his status, and he always stay wherever simple as possible, And other lineage holders, they have this monk official. They would never accept such things. But His Holiness, no problem. Nor does his attendant say such things. I remember seeing His Holiness staying there. I felt a little bit sort of embarrassed that we Australians haven't really got anything better to offer for him to stay. But they were. This is the middle of the bush, so the people up there in Kyogo did very well, even to be able to put up that hut. Someone from Singapore actually sponsored that hut, I'm told. So Singaporeans has always been incredible, generous supporters, because His Holiness Sakya Tenzin have been to Singapore many times. The Sakya Temple in Singapore has been from the very early 80s, I think. Early 80s, and if not 70s. Sakya Center was established in Singapore. There was already a Buddha Sasana Society there. It wasn't originally Sakya Center. It was a Buddha Sasana Society, probably more leaning on to Theravada. And then a gentleman called Mr. Yang, and he and his friends, under the influence of few Australian and American Sakya monks, they managed to invite few Sakya teachers. The Tariq Tulku probably was the first Sakyamon teacher to go to Buddha Sasana. Anyway, so Singapore, we have very many Dharmas brothers and sisters there. Not only that, the Sakya Center there has been very rock solid supporter and devotee of His Holiness Sakya Sakya Tenzin. And so, as one of the members or person from Singapore actually sponsored this hut for where His Holiness can stay in Australia. Can you believe it? So we are very thankful. We're all connected. See, all the international sanghas very connected. And anyway, so His Holiness, the place is it rained a lot, in Kyogo. It was muddy and it was almost unthinkable. But in spite of that, Lamde Tsokshe was given there, and then again in 1996, His Holiness came and gave Lamde Lobshe in Kyogo, 1997 rather. So both during his Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche's inspiration, Dzongsa Khyentse really wanted to keep bringing the important lineage holders to Australia. He really wanted to champion the Rime non-sectarian movement. This is not just lip service. He actually did that. He invited His Holiness Drukchen. He invited Her Eminence Jitsun Kusho, and I was part of those committee during those days. And he also was invited Kalu Rinpoche. Kalu Rinpoche was alive those days, and Kalu Rinpoche's visit was already finalized. We only already produced brochure, but he passed away and he couldn't come. So anyway, so His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen visited Australia 3 times. The last time he 4 times. Last time 4 times he gave. Lamde he gave 3 times, but he visited 4 times. He visited 2003 and Australia, and that time we had already founded Virupa, and His Holiness gave Vajra cause empowerment, and many people were able to receive that, many Australians. And then His Holiness also gave Vajrayogini teachings and empowerment in Sydney. And then in 2009, he gave Lamdre in Sydney, hosted by the then Drogmi Buddhist Society in Sakyatapa Ling. So we don't know which is which, because that Drogmi Retreat Center didn't eventually existed. Anyway, so they jointly organized that in Sydney, Balmain Town. That was quite a big historical thing too. Balmain Town Hall. Lamdre was given there for was it Balmain Town Hall or maybe not? Anyway, there were some events held in Balmain Town Hall. My memory is sketchy. Anyway, His Holiness gave Lamdre in Sydney, and that was in 2009. And so many people received it. Many people traveled from all over the world, and His Holiness also traveled to Virupa and down to Siba, and of course he gave Sakya Pandita's clarifying the sage's intent teaching, and Bodhisattva vows, and many other empowerments teaching to all the Sakya centers. We had quite a lot of branches everywhere, and His Holiness visited most of them. His Holiness, of course, has also founded this Sakya Trichen Kunkyapling in up near New York. So that has become his really seat in there. That was in about, I think, early 2000 that His Holiness founded with the assistance of Khenpo Konjo Gyaltsen and the devotees in USA. It's a very lovely temple, so that's really a major seat. Then since then, His Holiness given Lamdre there, and His Holiness given many teachings all over Europe and Spain. So His Holiness speaks fluent English. You wouldn't believe how beautiful, soft, gentle, perfect English. His Holiness gives the empowerment teachings in English. So when His Holiness travels, you don't have to rely on translators and no wastage of time. People really receive. I've taken a number of groups to India, during which His Holiness gave many empowerments and so on. His Holiness visited all the major cities in Australia, and he gave many teachings, many empowerments. Then most important thing is His Holiness, because of his inspiration, both of his sons, Ratnavaja Rinpoche and Gyanavaja Rinpoche, seeing that they are all both growing up, after consulting with His Holiness Dakchen Rinpoche from the other family, they decided to change the future method of how Sakya leadership is organized. So they decided to give the honor for the young Khan families to take on the reign, whoever is senior by age and the knowledge and experience, and then have a duration of 3 years. So and then both His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen and Dakchen Rinpoche completely agree, totally. I mean, that's amazing. You wouldn't see such leadership that does with such a respect and kindness and humility. And this is the noble family we are talking about, so we're a good example. And then another thing is how His Holiness Sakya Tenzin is viewed by Tibetan people is the 100% supporter and devotee of His Holiness Dalai Lama, and never see himself as a head of anything. He's just a devotee. He's always treat His Holiness Dalai Lama as the undisputed head and lineage, and as a result of that, Tibetans have this amazing view and respect to His Holiness, almost unprecedented to any Sakya Tenzins. And previously, in the Sakya Tenzins only stayed in Sakya monastery. That's it. Even though the role of the Sakya Tenzin was very highly revered, only second to the Dalai Lama, but not it didn't have really much kind of treatment, especially by the rest of the Tibetans. But some traditional devotees in Eastern Tibet, and where Sakya Tenzin is well known, of course they are traditional devotees. But overall Tibetans, both in exile and in Tibet, the kind of respect that people have for His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trijin is quite unprecedented. And this is mainly because of His Holiness, how he conducted as a leader, as a humble but very wise, compassionate. We talk about bodhisattvas, qualities of compassion, wisdom, and a power. But if you don't have compassion, what is wisdom? What is power? His Holiness kindness is, you can see, you can see how everyone in the family, how everyone in the monasteries, how all the Tibetans actually feel. No matter whatever people's requests are, he's always willing to receive. He devotes a couple of hours each day to give audience to all these villagers, ordinary people from, you don't have to make an appointment, and everybody can just rock up at his door, and they will have 2-3 hours each day opportunity to see him and to get his blessing, get advice, and all of that under all kinds of hours, and completely accessible without any security. You don't have to bring passport. You don't have to have any Indian police. We don't have any of that. With His Holiness, it's complete. Everybody has that access without having to go and register. There is no political clout over His Holiness Sakya Tenzin's role because of the way he conducted, and because he's seen as the teacher of that kind of how he operated. And he's seen as the noblest of all examples of a living teacher by all Tibetan Buddhist traditions because of the actual indescribable qualities. We're talking about qualities of not some certificate you hang on the wall, or we're talking about qualities, actual the unconditional compassion to all sentient beings, as well as those to the others. And he says, so all His Holiness travels wherever he travels. All the proceeds, whatever the centers and organization gather, makes offering, he always give everything to the organizations. He never take anything, not a single penny. He only accept the private, personal offerings of individuals, but otherwise he gives everything to each and every organization. And that's how his tireless visits are always helping every centers, monasteries, organizations, whether they are Tibetan or whatever. All this is not just His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, and same goes with Sakya Yana Vajra Rinpoche, Radha Vajra Rinpoche. This is a whole noble examples of completely at the behest and at the benefit of other sentient beings. So quite a lot of time you may wonder, quite a lot of that Tibetan teachers are deliberately traveling to raise fund and take all the funds back to India, and that's most of their cases. And they might have some big sponsors who might sponsor some of the constructions, but their main purpose is try to raise fund. But when it comes to His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen and his sons, they actually have the tradition of giving everything back to the various organizations and centers and establishments, so that they can, all the Sakya centers in Australia, or I'm sure everywhere, wherever they are all there because of His Holiness' generosity and kindness and true noble examples of Bodhisattva. So we really need to honor these real lived through examples of the Bodhisattva. And if you go to actual how His Holiness lives, this is very humble, just a humble house, He might have maybe about 10 or 15 staff helping there, but each and every one of them is completely dedicated. And all the Dharma Kushos, Yum Kusho, all the way from down to the Gyayum, the other Dharma Kusho, Dharma Kandela, and Sonam, and so on. They're all incredibly blessed people. You can see that. They all have the quality, because we have a saying in Tibetan, if a piece of ordinary log is put in a sandalwood bush, then even the piece of log would have been scented with sandalwood scent. It's like that. Everybody is basically blessed by his noble qualities. So this is actually what is called Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva is always working. And Atisha predicted that all the Sakya lineage holders will be blessed, will be reincarnation of the Bodhisattvas, Manjushri, and so on. His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen himself is undisputedly recognized as a Manjushri by the Sakyas and Padmasambhava by the Nyingmas. So, and he's not only viewed like that, his activities are none other than that. And this is what Tibetan Buddhist organizations in general, and Sakya and other lineages in particular, have great joy to have such living teachers amongst us. Now, His Holiness Dalai Lama and His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen are almost the two only surviving heads of the lineage. His Holiness 16 Karmapa passed away in early 80s. We know that. He didn't really live long at all. And His Holiness the Dunjom Rinpoche also passed away, head of lineage, and Tingo Khyentse Rinpoche passed away, Minling Trichen passed away, and His Holiness Dalai Lama's senior and junior tutor, both of them passed away. So we don't have, and His Eminence Chogye Triche Rinpoche, Khyentse Ape Rinpoche, and Khenpo Kunga Wangchu, all those senior lamas all have passed away. So we basically have still among us the living bodhisattvas like His Holiness Dalai Lama and His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen. These are like the true sun and moon, like really what symbolize Tibetan Buddhism. These incredible bodhisattvas who are not only teaching and living by the examples, but actually carrying out the very activities. So all the His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, due to his unflagging leadership, both of the two Dungses, His Holiness Radha Vajra the 42nd, and Gyana Vajra Rinpoche. Gyana Vajra Rinpoche is now the 43rd. He's reigning head of the Sakya lineage as currently. So due to COVID-19, the successor was delayed a couple of years. Now he was enthroned only early this year. I think in March or April, if I'm not wrong. So both of them has married, of course, and both of them has fathered 3 children each, and all of the children are incredibly well groomed, well trained, and we every time we look at the family kind of photos, we always feel incredibly joyful that how successfully the family has of course retrained the young. Not only that, the other Phuntsok Podang family, who's all of his Dakchen Rinpoche's 5 sons, all lived in USA, even though none of them didn't quite receive the training and are quite in the position to take over the reign. But nevertheless, 2 of the 5 Dungses, Zaya Rinpoche and Ani Vajra Rinpoche, both of them, their marriage has resulted would be kind of a successor in the Sakya successor. We have Abhiketa Rinpoche, Abhaya Vajra Rinpoche, who are both Zaya Rinpoche's sons. They are both training as we speak, and then also His Eminence Asanga Vajra Rinpoche, who is a son of Ani Vajra Rinpoche. All the parents and family live in Seattle, by the way. But these young boys, actually, both Asanga Vajra Rinpoche, Ani, and Abhiketa Rinpoche and Abhay, all of them basically renounce their education in USA and went to India and study from very early ages. And when they went first, of course, their Tibetan might be very patchy, and let alone much of the Dharma, because they're born in America, born in America and brought up in American kind of primary schools, and they all decided to stop that and move back to India in order to follow the noble examples that His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen has set up. And so His Holiness and Dharma Kushu Yumgu, they treat these boys exactly as their own sons. And you wouldn't believe how beautiful it is to watch, how much care and gentleness and generosity and mentorship is really what it's all about. The current role of His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen and Yum Kusho is the amazing mentorship for the younger ones to how to pass over the reign, and not only just officially giving something, but actually still looking after them. So His Holiness deliberately said, when people ask him, isn't the duration of the tenure of the Sakya Trinzens too short, only 3 years or something? Then His Holiness said, no, it's very good, and while I'm alive, if I'm there, I can still be of help to whenever they need. At the same time, they all can learn and take on the roles. So exactly. So now we have not only 2 families, but we have 4 families. 4 families whose children are all trained as a future Sakya Trinzins. And I know that Radha Vajra Rinpoche's eldest daughter is a nun, and she's really exceptionally gifted, showing maybe she will become actually take ordination as a nun. And right now she is whether she has been ordained or not, she still is in robes. So you can see the likelihood of Sakya Kon family also providing a leadership in the monastic tradition is there, because Abhaya Vajra Rinpoche from Kon family, from Phuntsok Podang, is a monk, and from the Dharma Podang, Jitsuma, His Holiness Radha Vajra Rinpoche's eldest daughter, Jitsuma, is also a nun. So of course it will be good to have another Sakya Pandita, another Chogya Pakpa, who were ordained members of the Kon family. So in 21st century, of course, the Vinaya lineage is a little bit weak, in the Sakya tradition, because we don't have many who are able to carry on. We do have some, but still really need that. So we have a great hope, whether the Sakya Trichen leadership pass to a girl or not. I can't see why it shouldn't, because we live in the 21st century and this is the reality we all face. Why don't we grow up and give also the head of the Sakya lineage to the Jitsuma when her training and age also matures eligibly. She's proving and looking very, very impressive, as she should. And because the whole world is looking for equal opportunities, women leadership. But firstly, Tibetan Buddhists have to come to reality. You have to allow ordination for highest women's ordination. And if they are qualified with their discipline and knowledge and goodness, they too should be given some kind of leadership. Anyway, so that's not up to me. There's no point me voicing here. But what I'm saying is, we live in the 21st century, and there is a possibility of emerging leaders as a monastic Kon members, Kon leader monastics, both male and female. I mean, that would be fantastic. I sometimes say to people, ask me, what's the difference between Gelugpa and Sakya? I say, Gelugpas are monastic Sakyas, and Sakya is the householder Buddhist. So I said, there are no difference, because Gelugpa is basically disciple of Sakyas. Tsongkhapa was a disciple of Sakya teachers, and so is his two successors. They both were ex-Sakya monks. So the Gelugpa, which is very strong in the Vinaya lineage, and a lot of them are basically holding the monastic reign very, very ably. In other lineages, they have the lineage, but not in a big way. So, but if there is a Vinaya lineage holder who come from Sakya Kon family, which looks like eminent now, we have Abhaya Vajra Rinpoche and Jitsuma, both are ordained, and they are not very far from taking the reign in the next decade or so. So of course the world will be welcoming, particularly a woman leadership, because she is very well versed. She's very incredibly gifted and devoted to the trainings as under the guidance of His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen. So today I decided to talk on His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen's life in honoring his incredible noble examples. That is not just to few people who call themselves Sakyas, but to all Buddhists, really, to all Tibetans. There's hardly anyone who wouldn't know who he is. For them to even to see him, go near him, is considered very, very fortunate, let alone receive teachings and so on. And so he's still healthy and guiding us all. So as we today all of you given your attention to listen to this, I was going to show some photos, but I think you all did manage to show some photos. But if you search His Holiness Radha Vajra Rinpoche, His Gyana Vajra Rinpoche, or Sakya Dolma Poda, they have incredible number of photos. And these days you don't have to do screen share. You just look at it yourself. I was trying to do some screen sharing, but technically it hasn't quite worked out as well as but but I'm very fortunate because I have received half a dozen lamde, Tsokshe and Lopshe, both from His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen, and I have translated for him several of those occasions, and I was also asked by him to translate the Penchen Lama Choedak's text on Triple Tantra. So every one of whenever he bring His Holiness Sakya Gongma Trichen to Australia, I always request him to give the empowerment that Chogyam Pakpa gave to the Mongol Khans in China in 1253, and so and when I first took a group of 7 New Zealanders to India in 19 when was that? Yeah, 1985. 85. Then His Holiness gave both Hevajar cause and path empowerment to just about, only about 10 or 12 people that we went all the way to Rajpur, Dehradun, and he was gracious. So all the people who have really have connection through me have all been fortunate to receive such empowerment. So I'm sure those of you who are able to meet him in the future, either by going to India or whatever, you will also have the opportunity. These days, His Holiness does give lots of teachings, empowerment, sometimes online. You should all try to register those empowerment because His Holiness often teach directly in English, and unlike any of the other Tibetan teachers. So that's an incredible gift and blessings. While the main bulk of the empowerments conducted in Tibetan, but essential point His Holiness explained them in immaculate English. So I strongly urge all of you to make such connection whenever time permits, because His Holiness is already 79 years old, and we hope to bring him to Australia and other places in the near future, particularly if we succeed to build our temple here in Canberra. But nevertheless, you will have opportunity to receive empowerment teachings, watch his teachings. There are some of them are on YouTube. So I'd like to share with you today that celebrating His Holiness' not only birthday, but remembering his kindness and wisdom and blessings streaming through everybody's life. And someone like insignificant person like me can do little Dharma work here in with few people is all because of his kindness and blessings, as much as all the other good work that goes on to support His Holiness Dharma work. So thank you very much, everyone. That's all we have time for. May His Holiness live long and fulfill his wishes that already. May we be able to emulate his noble examples. So with this, we dedicate the merits here. Thank you very much, everyone. Where has been born, may it Thank you, everyone. Take care.